Oh, I'm so excited about this next segment and our guest that's coming up. McCord Museum, they're offering up a new exhibition. It's called On the Menu, Montreal, A History of Restaurants. It's inviting visitors to explore the evolution of Montreal's restaurant scene and learn of its history since the 1960s. The inspiration for this exhibition was from our next guest, someone that you know and love who's critiqued a lot of restaurants over the years. Lesley Chesterman, the one, the only, is on the line. Lesley, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Elias. That is the best introduction I've ever gotten for a radio show.
You know what? Let me tell you something, and it's true. It's from the heart. I absolutely adore you. Whether it's and you have a mellifluous voice, by the way, as well. Like your voice is amazing, and you got great takes.
Okay, I'm going to take. I'll send the envelope of money later. Okay, so
you got it. Actually, just cook me a meal. That's probably
or
even
dinner.
better.
Exactly. I'll make you dinner.
So, Lesley, let's talk about this. The inspiration here. How far does this go back? Where you said, "Hey, we got to do something. We got to celebrate in this city our restaurant history."
It's almost exactly 10 years that I approached the McCord Museum to do something about this because there had been something similar done by a man called William Grimes at the New York Public Library. William Grimes was the restaurant critic of the New York Times back then, and they did a very interesting exhibit about the history of New York restaurants divided into two. So they divided it into kind of casual cafeterias, cafes and stuff, and then fine dining. And so, when I saw this, I thought to myself, we have a big enough city with a rich enough dining culture that we could also do this. So I approached the museum. It's funny, like really 10 years ago, almost exactly. And, I said, why don't we do this? And at first they're a bit like, what? Like menus? And I'm thinking, and they had a lot of things in their archives too. So the idea was to really, no, let's talk about the evolution, the decades. And so lo and behold, now it just opened, what is this today, Friday, 2 days ago on Wednesday, and it's going to be at the museum for a year. And I hope all Montrealers come and see this wonderful display of our city's restaurant history.
How did you determine, what got on the menu, right? I'm sure you can't put everything there. You've got to sort of have some editorial judgment there. How do you think how did that play out, and how did you decide what made the menu?
For the exhibit, I wasn't the one working on the exhibit. The museum, I got the idea and gave a lot of suggestions, kind of the project, but the museum took care of putting it all together. So I came in for some meetings and made some suggestions. For instance, you'll see in the museum, there are some plates from the former famous restaurant on the Main called Buena Notte, which I'm sure tons of people knew about.
Yes.
And if you went to Buena Notte, you knew that there was kind of this whole wall of fame plates that all the visiting celebrities and sports figures and Grand Prix racers would sign the plates. So when we had a meeting, I said, look, you've got to find those plates. You've got to find some of those plates because they were so symbolic of the time, which was kind of the 90s in Montreal. I guess, it's funny, I say the 90s, but I realize now the 90s was 35 years ago, so I shouldn't say that.
That's right.
But maybe even 2000, time has flown in this city when it comes to restaurants. So they really kind of break it up by decade and also by neighborhoods.
And Lesley, let me tell you something. The people I worked with 25 years ago, 20 years ago, when I worked for the Expos and I worked with a lot of Americans, when I talk to them today, that's all they all want to, what happened to Buena Notte? That's all they want to know about, right? So
what happened to the Main? It wasn't even just Buena Notte. It was Buena Notte. There was another great restaurant called Mediterraneo. Those of us who knew it loved it. And then the chef, Claude Pelche, moved on to the Club Chasse Pêche, and there was another great restaurant called Prima Donna. And if you go even further back, there was a restaurant called Luna. There was a restaurant called Boulevards. And now it's kind of, not this for those of us who remember. But that's what this exhibit is all about, is kind of looking back on these great moments. And fortunately, we still have new great moments happening all the time on the restaurant scene.
So, yeah, that is true, right? And this is certainly a city that continues to this day, and some would argue maybe it's never been better, but I know we could go back and forth on that. But when you go through the exhibit, is it a bit bittersweet, though, because of, you see everything we've lost? How do you view it when you got to experience the exhibit?
Well, my biggest loss, of course, was A La Crêpe Bretonne, I went there when I was under the age of 10, so I'm sure a lot of people don't remember that. But A La Crêpe Bretonne was this amazing crepe restaurant where there was actually a lineup, and it was on Mountain. And it was, I think, on the second and third floor, or maybe the first and second floor. Anyway, I was like 7, so it's hard for me to look back. But when I saw that menu, I got this pang, and I'm like, I want it to come back. But there are a lot of restaurants. Leal, that was a great fine dining, very French restaurant, and I think I want that to come back. But, the owner, Jacques Landry, I met his daughter here at the opening night. And, it's nice to want all these things to come back, but time goes on, and Mr. Landry passed away a long time ago. And, his chef might be in his 70s. So, time goes on, and as long as these restaurants get replaced by new, fun, and exciting restaurants, then the pang is a little less. But I still haven't found my great crepe restaurant to replace that one.
We're with Lesley Chesterman, writer, restaurant critic, cookbook author, and was one of the inspirations for this new exhibit that's happening at the McCord Museum called On the Menu, Montreal, a Restaurant Story. Just opened up a couple of days ago. It's going to run until next year, right? October 18th of 2026. Yep. If I have that
amazing.
Correct. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So let's go through the maybe we want to go through the decades here. Do you think there's one part of this exhibit that quite excels in capturing a decade or an era?
Well, they really begin in the 60s. And when you look at kind of the 60s to 70s, the big point there is Expo 67. So Expo 67 is when all the pavilions had their own restaurants. And that's when, Quebecers, Montrealers, but really all the tourists who came realized that there's, more to life than very simple food that people were having at the time. So it kind of made us travel through food. And a lot of the chefs that came for Expo 67 actually stayed behind. And then so you go into 60s to 70s, and then you're going 70s to 80s. And 80s is starting to be more creative cuisine, but still very French around here. Those were the days that you still had people come to a cart at your table and flambe a steak or some cherries or something. It was still very, very French back then. But when you get to the 90s, like 1990 was the opening of a restaurant called Citrus, which was on St. Lawrence. And that was the chef called Normand Laprise who started there, and he started to do Québécois cooking. And so then he opened his own restaurant, Choquet, in 1993. And that kind of became the whole revolution of we weren't eating European food anymore. We're really eating local food made with local ingredients inspired by old school Québécois recipes and kind of international cuisine, not so much just French anymore. And then we went into 2000 with the beginning of restaurants like Au Pied de Cochon, and then Joe Beef came along. And then, cut to today where everything is radically changed. Chef-owned restaurants instead of restaurateur restaurants, which were the big thing back then. If you look at restaurants like Moishes at the time and all that, they weren't chef-driven restaurants. That was kind of a steakhouse, and it was owned by people who, we knew the restaurant owners more than the chefs back then. But now the chefs are the stars. So things have radically changed over the time. And it's fun to see the exhibit that you kind of see the evolution also from, old Montreal eating, the Plateau eating, Saint-Henri eating. We keep changing where we eat and how we eat in this city.
And what's interesting is you're so right. Like now it seems everything is personality, character driven, right? And there's star-studded quality to a lot of chefs now in this city, and it's fascinating. Why don't I ask you the hard question here, Lesley? The Montreal restaurant scene 2025, is it the best of times? Is it the worst of times? How do you view it?
I think post-pandemic, we as so many big cities really suffered. I just got back from London, and they were saying that even in London, England, they were really suffering despite the fact that they have a very rich clientele. But I think now is a really high time for Montreal restaurants. We just recently scored huge at the World's 50 Best North American list. Number 2 in all of North America was Mon Lapin. And, I think we had 5 restaurants from Montreal on the list. And, Miami had none. Chicago maybe had 1. And Montreal had 5. So I think people are finally discovering what a great food. I always knew. I've been saying this for years. But I really do believe in our restaurant scene when it comes not only to food, but service, the wine scene, and for people who come from elsewhere, the exchange is, I don't like just making it about, we're cheaper than everybody else. Mm-hmm. But you know what? We're cheaper than everybody else, and we have a lot of value for that money.
What's your gem of late?
I really love a restaurant called Cassavant. I really love Cassavant, and I really love the second restaurant in Mont Lapin called La Lune, which is a rotisserie chicken place. I like a good rotisserie chicken and French fries as much as fine dining As long as it's good, it's all good.
La Lune and its rotisserie chicken. My goodness. Okay. I'm searching up right now. Where's Cassavant?
Cassavant is in, is it Villeray or Huntsic? I think it's Villeray. Really great restaurant, small plates, very small, and just very cool restaurant. It just shows what Montreal does well. And great wine service.
And we're still doing it here. Lesley, you're the best, as I said off the top. Come back real soon, okay?
All right, take care.
That's Lesley Chesterman, writer, restaurant critic, and I'll let you know once again, on the menu, Montreal, a restaurant story at the McCord Stewart Museum, and it's running now until October 18th of 2026. You got time, but go now. Like, don't wait till next October, folks.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years.
And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.